Good evening, everyone. Calling this meeting of the Kingston Common Council's Finance Committee to order at 6:39 here on July the 9th, 5 days after the country's birthday. Hope everybody had a good one.
49. Only 249. That's
Such a baby.
also Louis Armstrong's birthday.
Satchmo. Did he really have a cousin named Satch Bless? That's what I want to know. All right. Then we'll start, as is our wont, with the report from the comptroller, who found an extra $17 million in the budget, right?
Oh, if only, I wish. A secret stash. All right, I'll try to keep it relatively quick. There's not a lot of updates from last month. I do have a couple of small updates. We were talking a little bit last month about the cannabis revenue. I was able to get on the OC and this office, New York State Office of Cannabis Management website. I found they actually have a dispensary locator on there. I was able to confirm there are 2 operating dispensaries in Kingston. They listed all the. You can sort it if you go on the website. You can sort it by location. I was able to identify the 2 that are the 124 that are in Kingston. I think you generally know who they are. I don't receive when we do receive the payments from the county that are passed down from the state. We don't get further information, identify the splits of sales, et cetera. But so that's the update on that. On sales tax itself, we've received a couple more payments. We are now sitting at a little better than where we were, but we're still down 6.2% from last year. We're still not on pace to reach budget. We're not terrible amount. We're still a little bit below budget. Other than that, I just want to reiterate a couple things. One thing is the audit will be done soon. I hope to have that to the council within the next month, a little earlier than normal. And I just want to reiterate that second page of the budget stressors. I know I've touched on this when I handed out the, I believe the city's internal 2024 report, but I'm certainly seeing a lot of budgetary stress coming into 26. Significant budgetary stress. With sales tax not picking up. Keep in mind that with sales tax and property tax, roughly $20 million revenue items, they are by far and away primary revenue sources for the city of Kingston. When one's not going up, there's pressure on the other one. So and then this page here, budgetary stressor, lists some of the stresses, but just maybe quantify some of this for you. Examples, employee benefit costs. That's a $20 million budget item. So you got 20 million there, and you got property tax 20 million. Benefits have been going up 6, 7, 8% a year. If there were no other revenues, that would equate to a 6 or 7 or 8% increase in property taxes alone, just for that one item. Personnel costs are 26 million. It's even larger than benefit costs. Those tend to go up several percent a year, right? So I'm just seeing those items alone causing significant budgetary stress. Right now, CSCA and KPBA will be out of contract at the end of this year. So the 26 is unknown. So you have the potential for something there.
Have negotiations started with?
Neither of those. KPFFA, we are in negotiation, but they're out of contract for 25. So they have 25 and 26 kind of double stacked. Okay. So there's a significant amount of budgetary stress for those items. Of course, there's other revenue sources, but there's the departmental revenue, the fee revenue doesn't. It's just there really drops in a proverbial bucket in terms of trying to level out $25 million furniture areas. So just throw that out there, and also the other part, another related item is on the expense side is debt service. We're doing a lot of great capital projects, and we've seen a lot of the wonderful things we're doing with the infrastructure, amenities. What we're certainly seeing, I'm doing a projection of debt service costs for next year. I'm working with our fiscal advisor on trying to structure that debt is as economically beneficial to our taxpayers as possible, being fiscally prudent. I'm still expecting, significant increases in debt service costs for next year. So, that's just the pro and con, right? Of, every time we do these infrastructure projects, a lot of them grants and tax helps bring down the cost, but, there is a debt service side to that does require, a budgetary allocation. So, I'm just kind of seeing that, these items come together. It's going to be, and the pressure really is because there's not a lot other than property tax, where I'm seeing like, big revenue spikes or potential to increase revenue estimates short of like, the economy turning around and, so, but feel free to ask questions or, I don't want to, and I don't mean to be doom and gloom. I just, I just don't want anyone to, I just don't want anyone to be caught off guard or to be surprised, or just know when you're making decisions from this point, and I think this pressure is going to be here for several years. I don't think it's just next year. So, everything, bond ordinances, whether it's, new lines in the budget, I mean, they all, cause budgetary pressure. I know there's most cases, almost every case, there's a great reason, for doing so, right? We have the operating reasons, we have amenities we want to put in. There's, whether it's a sewer repair that has to get done, or if it's a, road work that has to get done, or, but there's, this is the, the ugly side of it, right? That, we have to go to our taxpayers. So
I have a question.
sure.
Is the debt service that you say, that you see coming, is that for new projects? Or is the pressure also for old projects? And can some of those projects can the debt period be extended so that the pressure could be reduced? Or once the bond and the debt payments are sort of set, are they set in stone, or can they be refinanced?
That's a bunch of
I mean, it's a bunch of questions.
That's a bunch of
I was going to do one, but
I'll try to answer it as best I can, right? So,
okay.
So the additional pressure for next year, that I see with the debt service is, for projects, more recent projects, and quite frankly, a lot of it's equipment.
Okay.
Whether it's, as we, whether it's trucks, equipment,
Right.
in the last several years, we had enough fund balance where we used some of the fund balance to pay down debt. We weren't able, I'm not recommending to do that at this time. Our fund balance is down. But it's mainly for, most of it's equipment, some of it's infrastructure, but it's expenditures really within the last, I would say, 12 to 18 months, well, mainly within the last 12 months. And then there's like, we're also borrowing for items that we've issued purchase order for, but we haven't spent, but we know we're going to need that money before we borrow again. In terms of how we structure it, I spend a lot of time on that with our fiscal advisor. I was here till probably 7 o'clock the other night, just working on it. You have to follow, there's law that you have to follow, right? You have to, right? There's certain periods that you can borrow, like every bond ordinance that you see has what's called a PPU. It's a period of probable usefulness of which you can legally borrow for. Some projects are, police vehicles 3 years. You have some equipment that's 5 years, some that are 10, 15, all the way up to 40. Typically we don't, all that said, we put all the borrowings for all these projects together and we do one issuance.
Right.
So when we go out to borrow this month in August, we're going to be borrowing for probably, I say maybe 15 or so bond ordinances at one time, different things that we've purchased. And we work with our fiscal advisor on structuring what that looks like. Typically, we try to blend it and can't go too long on borrowing. Investors don't want to lend you money for 20 years or 25 years or 30 years, right? So 20 years is probably the max.
Okay.
But what we're trying to do this year, the last several years, we've been doing a short-term note for 1 year, and then rolling it over from 1 year to the next. I believe this year, in terms of, I think the fiscally prudent thing to do is to, we're going to try to do a bond instead of a short-term note. So we're going to go long-term this year, take advantage of the current interest rates, gives us a little more flexibility in a repayment schedule. That will save us I'll say this, a good chunk in next year's budget while keeping the overall interest paid over the life of the notes, competitive and actually less than what we, would be if we'd say long term or short term. So, I think it's budgetarily and fiscally the prudent way to go. But yeah, those are decisions we look at every time we borrow. It's, we go short term, we go long term, because those are decisions, right? So when you're in short term notes, like if I borrow $20 million this August and I roll that to next August, tell me if I'm like getting too much at nitty gritty, but if we borrow a short term note, the risk is that, the city has great credit, but if the market's in a weird spot the next August, you're basically at the mercy of whatever the interest rates are at that point. So like if they're good now, we do a short-term note. The interest rates change a lot next August. There's a little more risk there. There's also the risk of if the economy collapses, maybe somebody doesn't want to lend you at all. I mean, that's unlikely, but it's one of those outside possibilities. When you go long term, you can lock it up, right? You know what your long-term rates are going to be. It's fixed. That credit risk goes away. The interest rate risk goes away. But typically there's, the short-term notes sometimes are a little better on the short-term interest rate than the long-term rate. So it's just this constant game that, I say game, but like, decisions that we have to make, and we're trying to do look at it, what's the best interest for the city at the time. So getting back to the original question, yeah, there's a lot of infrastructure and equipment, mainly equipment that we have to borrow for. I'm projecting that at a minimum, we're looking at probably a $500,000 increase in debt service at this point. I mean, that number may change a bit, but that's when you're looking at every bond risk we do, right? It's typically, if you average it out, it's about, the principal payment is somewhere around, if you borrow $5 million, principal payments can be somewhere around $500,000 additional on that. And it's just a whole list of projects that we're borrowing for. So, and there's also projects that have been approved that we haven't borrowed. So, I don't see that pressure ending soon, because what we're not borrowing for in August are projects that have been approved, but say we don't expect to break ground for a while. We're not going to borrow on that, and we're not going to cause the city to pay interest on funds that they can't use for a while, right? That we're sitting and holding, right? So, we're either borrowing on a reimbursement basis where we've already spent the money, or we've issued a purchase order and we have a commitment to spend that money in a relatively short period of time. So,
can we just print more money?
I think it's been tried before.
Really?
Not very successful.
well, I don't think it would look pretty legit if I tried it. I'm not too good. It looks like that. I'll think like.
Well, thank you for this explanation.
Well, so.
I'm glad you're the person who's making the decisions about this. Well, you and our financial advisor.
Yeah, I mean, we have a good partnership with our financial advisor. I mean, it's helpful in terms of, structuring our debt, but, at the end of the day, there's only, there's certain things that you can do. There's certain pay down methods you can use. We try to do what we think is in the best interest of our taxpayers over the long haul. We're pretty conservative in our approach. Fiscal, conservatives are, but there's only so many ways you can do it. And at the end of the day, when you're taking on, more capital costs, you're going to have pressure on debt service.
Not really a question, this is more food for thought, because in my 7.5 years, so longer serving council members, we really haven't had to worry about money in these 7 years. So anything that comes to the council, it's, obviously we think about it, and but we really haven't had to say no because of financial reasons. But I wonder if this may be a good time, not tonight, but a good time to think about council priorities, so that when we move forward, we may not be able to say yes to everything. Instead, think about what the council wants and prioritize those as things come to us. May be a good idea because this isn't the first time John has come to us with this kind of, it's been all year.
Right.
And even last, but
Yeah.
it's been a year really since you've been coming to us and warning us, and it's something that we have to face and we haven't had to face it before. So I think that might, if everybody's open to that, that might be a good idea for us to start having these conversations.
That seems very smart.
I mean, my recommendation is simply that, I think you take all the information and you make your educated decision on it, but just be aware that, whatever the city share of any new costs are, whether it's, bond or if it's, new program or whatever, likely it's going to have an impact on, your taxes, right? So just, your decision can be, is this worth, is this, are we willing to raise taxes for this amount? Is that, that's, if you kind of put it in that parameter, just because you just want to make you aware, right? And then, back in your mind as you're making decisions that, back years ago when sales tax was just growing leaps and bounds, we didn't talk about it necessarily in these terms, but, maybe there was some feeling that, hey, the sales tax is going to level all the spending out. There's nothing on the backside leveling out decisions to spend new money now. I mean, obviously, a lot of projects have grants related to it that's going to bring down that net cost. Whatever that net cost is, it's likely going to have an impact on, your tax levy, right? So
Right. Yeah.
until we find new revenue sources, we're always looking. We're still trying to pick up rocks, but
No, to move to revenue that's coming in, looking at the extra enforcement, the $15,000 coming in for June, is that more than coming in for enforcement in past months or?
I think it's it's around. I mean,
Some of those, okay.
yeah, and at some point maybe I'll if the council wants to keep evidence for a while, I can. But the initial, at least to provide the council for the first few months, I at least wanted to show the council that you communicate to me the need for extra enforcement. I wanted to communicate to the council that we are finding violations out there. That the cost, clearly the cost of our internal cost of policing these, and I say policing, but it's park enforcement of enforcing these violations is less than what we're bringing in here. This is only 8 shifts of overtime.
Yeah.
So, from a financial perspective, it's worthwhile. And we certainly are finding plenty of safety violations out there. So, this revenue was not originally planned on. So this is all really above and beyond what we had anticipated. So that's, that might be some more budgetary flexibility next year with this, but keep in mind in the grand scheme of things, even if it's 100,000, whatever that number is, it's not
20 million.
it's not worth $20 million sales tax, $20 million property tax, right? It's, these are, there's something and they add up, but it's, you need a lot of these to balance the budget.
Do you think there's any effect on our budget that the removal of income tax on certain overtime will have?
I have to dig in that more. Not much is across my desk yet, but it would impact our FICA budget. Is where it would impact us. So, that would be 7.65% of whatever overtime is under that now. But any impact, once again, it would be an impact. But it would be in terms of the grand scheme of the budget, pretty negligible.
Okay.
Just another question about tickets. I know that the police have been issuing a lot of speeding tickets, particularly on some of the streets and they're more blunt with this further, because I see them pulling people over.
Okay.
Is there any way that we can see what the ticket revenue is or where?
Yeah, you know what?
I'm just curious if all of those.
Yeah, I can pull that up for you if you want. What I will tell you is that when the revenues come to our office on a monthly basis, it's just a lump sum total. We have to break down of what those amounts are. They are up from what they were in the past.
It's
And
hopefully correcting people.
Well, I'm not sure that that's
I know.
making a difference.
Well, a lot of tickets when John said this wasn't really helping people, I hope that being pulled over by a cop is.
Well, hopefully people are listening and realize that, if you do get a ticket, that should be a lesson that you should slow down.
Yeah, I think some people take it more as it's a lesson that you shouldn't get caught.
Just pulling up that number for you. It would be buried in some of the reports I gave you, but I'll fish it out here. It's taking a second.
Okay, there's no rush. I was just curious because I've been seeing that and the residents have been calling me and saying,
Are they content with that?
what?
Are they happy with that?
Oh, yeah, they're happy. But people are still speeding, you know? But, eventually, hopefully you get 2 or 3 tickets, maybe you will slow down. But no, they're happy because they see that enforcement is out there.
All right, then we can move to the first
Yes.
decision item on the budget action item here. And this is the kayak dock transfer.
Yes.
So the bids have come in for the work to be done. Unfortunately, they're higher, much higher than we expected. And so we're looking at taking some money from the New York CPC grant and from the fund balance of the rec trust fund. All right. Hi, Julie, you want to tell us
Hi.
more?
I couldn't have said it better myself. As you know, we started this project back in 2021. Then the word street bridge happened. I've come to you multiple times to get transfers year over year. And finally, now that it's done, we went out to bid and 2 bids were received and both were more than double the amount of money that I have. I don't want to forego the state funding, and so I would like to request funding from the Rec Trust Fund. And so the 2 bids are currently being reviewed. One came in at 116 and one at 130. So I'm asking for 130. I might only end up needing 116. And this dock is I worked with John Schulteis, who's on the call here, and with Jack, who's there in the room. And the design that we put together is frankly, the simplest thing we could put together for ADA compliance. And the cost just came in high because they're also doing the labor installation. We thought that maybe DPW would do that, and that's not going to happen. So the firm is going to do installation. Although that isn't the reason why I went so high over. It's just construction costs are higher. So I would like to request money from the Rec Trust Fund to cover the balance. And should this go through, both firms, depending on whoever we go with, can get the installation done by the end of October.
And so because this is regarding ADA compliance, is there a time factor here? And also, is there some sort of potential penalty if we don't get it done? From the federal government, I mean.
So this is state funding. The federal government hopefully will have nothing to do with it.
In terms of requiring it as ADA compliant.
So there is not going to be someone that comes by to check the ADA compliance of it. Both of the firms, the specs that we put out are for ADA compliant structure. However, we also acknowledge that depending on the final design, we live in a tidal area, and so twice a day the tide is very low, and that can just inherently not be compliant. But we worked with and John put together a design that is as compliant as possible in the space limitations that we have. The other thing is that we only have a limitation of 40 feet from the bulkhead. So within 40 feet, we need to also achieve ADA compliance as much as possible. Basically, this is a good faith effort, but the design that we put out is compliant. And so if we were to, first of all, if we were to rebid or if we were to change the design, any other design would not meet compliance, and any other rebidding, I can't imagine is going to be any lower, and not to mention time consuming. But in terms of time, I have been in conversations throughout the last 5 years with DEC, with my project manager, and they acknowledge the strange nuance of the fact that this bridge was built exactly on our project area during our project period. We've gotten as many extensions as we can get, but ultimately they did say, as long as we have the product ordered and purchased by October, we're okay. They would love to see it installed by October, but if I at least have it, then they'll give me like the slide to install it in the spring. But in order to put a finite time period on and an urgency on the RFP, we did say that they need to install by October, and both firms could do it within 16 to 20 weeks.
Okay, anybody else? Questions? Yeah.
I have a question about the fund balance of the Recreation Trust Fund. If we're taking $80,000 from it, what would be the balance that would be remaining?
Would defer to John Tui on that one.
I did.
He's looking it up.
All right, give me 1 second.
$100.
It's more than that. Remember we did allocate money towards, part of this question is, we did allocate money towards the pickleball
Right.
project, right?
Yes.
So that, a lot of that has not been spent yet, so I'll give you an idea of what's there now.
And I believe another project came in under budget that was using rec trust fund money. I don't remember which one that was, but I thought.
Wasn't it?
Pickleball?
Yeah.
Nice up.
Yeah, the bids that came in on pickleball were substantially lower than the budget.
Oh, did I just like spoil? Was that a spoiler alert? Sorry, Jack. Spoiler.
Give me 1 second here, I'm almost there. So, Jack, do you know how much you're gonna need from the rec fees? For the
Right.
pickleball total? 'Cause
Right
there's-
now, my contract, which was executed this week, is for 639. And I had an ask of 840.
Oh, wow.
And that 639, does that include all the other ancillary costs
Yeah.
coming through, like through the office?
But the little pieces that have come
Yeah.
through, yeah.
That includes that? All
Yeah,
that?
because those little pieces were about $5,000 or $6,000 that I spent for surveying and so forth.
Yeah, so you're sitting a little over $500,000 right now.
That would be left.
That would be left if,
Okay.
right, if we're only gonna spend the amount that Jack just indicated rather than the amount that's allocated. Because once again, we only pull it out of the rec trust fund as it's being spent. Like, council will approve it, right? We're not physically moving anything.
Right.
500 after
After that, yeah.
80
After,
or after Jack?
after Jack's, before Julie's request.
Okay.
So 4 420 then. Do we have an average number for input into that trust fund?
It
Highly variable.
It really, it highly varies. I mean, yeah, I mean, it varies. I mean, there's a lot of years where it's $80,000, $100,000. It just depends on, what projects are approved. It's usually, it's usually there's some small amounts, but what really drives up the account is, some of these larger projects and when they're, at that stage where they're paying that fee.
Well, I can tell you, I was just at the planning board meeting that approved the Penn Court project. They're gonna be paying rec fees $132,000.
There we go.
I don't know when the money will come in, but.
Put in 2 docs. That would be a pair of docs.
So anyway, yes, this is how, it's a big project, money.
Well, it's certainly, in terms of the financial, like, I know I just was talking about finance and everything. This doesn't draw upon fund balance that we can use in any other way, really, other than rec capital projects anyway, right? So, this is the only intended use of it.
Other questions?
What is the, for the old dock, what is the demand for this? How many people are using the dock or estimated to be using the dock each day? And it's really only useful for 6 months out of the year, right?
Well, it would be installed from like April through October. And I mean, I can't speak to what will happen the first day, but I mean, before we took the old, very deteriorated dock out, people were using it all the time. We had people fishing from it. We had people kayaking from it. The crew team uses it. And so I've also consulted with the Resource Center for Accessible Living on the design, with folks from the crew team, with the local Paddle Pals team groups. lots of different stakeholders have been involved with the design. Everyone's pressuring me to, when's it gonna go in? Plus it's an asset that we have always had, as one of the only, if not the only public launch besides the Point. Where people can launch their non-motorized boat for free. So, we've never done we haven't done like a count, but I would say there are certainly dozens, if not hundreds of people that use it.
And have we, if the school district is, if the crew team is asking us when it will be in, are they gonna be contributing any funds to this?
Nope. And so we also were, we had compromise with design. I would say that there were requests for us to put in a much larger launch so that the only launch that they currently use, which is at the Maritime Museum, wouldn't be the only option. We did not satisfy that request. We just don't have the money or the space, frankly, to putting in that large of a system. So it's not, if they use it at all, it would be like a auxiliary backup, or if they're having like a regatta or something where like a ton of people need to get in the water at the same time. But really it is not, the final design that we landed on is not designed for very large crew boats. Again, we have a very finite amount of space, especially depth wise, like distance from the bulkhead.
Other questions? All right, do we have a motion to approve? From Sarah Pasty, do we have a second? Second by Steve Shabbat. Is there any discussion?
I just want to bring up something that may come up in caucus is just out of the rec funds in general. Kind of going off with Michael's question was, I love kayaking, but I think it is, you have to have a kayak. You have to have money to do it.
It's a higher barrier to entry than the wall.
Yeah, and there were questions about pickleball and the use of the fund, the rec fund for pickleball, because it's designed for more privileged people. So I think that's gonna be a concern that comes up. So I don't, just want to put that out there. It would be nice, because we talked about that when we were doing the pickleball, that we would try to, at least I talked to some council members about how we should be balancing this for different folks, different walks of life, different parts of the city, and this seems like it's directed to a same class of people. So I'm not against it, but I just wanted to throw that out there because that night it came up at caucus right before the vote when Jack had to scramble. So I just wanted to throw that out there so for everybody to think about. And I think it is, even more of a concern, like Michael said, than the pickleball is, because I don't know how much a pickleball racket costs, but I'm assuming less than a kayak.
Every day's.
If I could speak to that, okay.
I'm afraid not, because we've entered into discussion. So
we can't ask questions anymore? I mean, my question was, can the
you can
kayak?
ask a question, yes.
Okay, but the kayak dock is probably used, like, what are the other activities that
Julie
take
said.
place?
Yeah.
Julie pointed out fishing,
Fishing, the
the
high school.
routine from the high school.
So that.
Yes, but it also,
But
and in essence, it gives some public access
that's what I was
as well.
getting to.
So it's not just kayakers. And lots of people from all over the city use that area. So,
Yeah, it's a very active area.
plus this has been on the books for how many years, Julie? 5 years. Yeah. And we've got state money, so we don't want to waste state money. Anyway, is there any other discussion then on that? Hearing no discussion, I'll call for the vote. All in favor? Anyone opposed? No. All right, so it passes unanimously 4-0. And oh, I forgot to read the thing. Sorry. Authorization of a $130,000 2025 budgetary transfers follow so that the city may utilize $80,000 of recreation trust fund monies to match $50,000 grant from New York State to EC for the Rondout Creek Public Kayak Access Project. Moving money from New York State's grant, $50,000, fund balance trust fund, $80,000 to other equipment, $130,000 because it's a grant, it's the trust fund. There is an estimated financial impact of $0. All right, thank you everyone for that one. Thank you, Julie. Thank you, Jack.
Thank you.
And John, thank you too. All right. Ruth Ann, are you here?
Present.
Are you awake?
I'm here.
All right.
I'm here with Jack White.
Oh, again?
Yes, he is the project manager for the resolution, the project that this resolution.
Okay.
So we are applying for a grant next month for the Rondout Neighborhood Center.
Mhm.
And this resolution is requesting authorization for a private grant. It is a large dollar figure, so I'm a little bit more nervous than usual making this request after John's report.
Right.
But one thing I did.
There's never a good time.
One thing I did want to add to this is I believe there is an existing New York State grant for this project already. It's $300,000, and I believe that that can be used towards the match. And forced account is another possibility that we can use for the match. Jack has been working on the scope, and I'm not sure exactly where you are with it. So our resolution request is for an amount up to $3 million. We're eligible to apply for $5 million, but we didn't want to go crazy. Jack, can you give any update about any kind of project costs that you're starting to gather?
Project costs, well, where I started with Lindsay and the team was to create the wish list. I am in the process of writing an RFP to get that out now, based on the fact that we already have the other grant that can be used for professional services to create the master plan and give us a true budget. So, with the original grant that we received, which was $300,000, we were limited to just fixing a few of the bathrooms and making them ADA compliant and making the first floor of the building ADA compliant. And that was going to be about a $400,000 project. The wish list now is to make the entire building ADA compliant so that we can get people up to the gymnasiums. We can have all new facilities on the second floor. We would put in a limited use, limited access elevator to the second floor. We would update all of the electric and heating and ventilation systems. We would repair and replace the second story exit from the gymnasium to also be ADA compliant to grade. New energy efficient windows, toilet rooms. We want to especially take care of what we feel might be some hazardous materials. The original building was built back in the early 1970s.
Oh.
It was a one-story building at first, and then in the late 70s, around 78, 79, they put the second story addition on it. So there's possibility of lead paint and asbestos had been used back at that time. So we want to take advantage of these additional funds to do full remediation on the building, like we did at the Andy Murphy Center. And then adding to the rest of the wish list would be a new basketball court outside, a new playground safety list with safety surface, and a full building generator. All depending on how that master plan comes together and what the final budget would be.
Sounds good.
Yeah, so at the 3 million was a draft of what we thought we would need. But if we go for the 3 million, we get the 3 million, then the whole master plan gets adjusted to stay within that.
Okay.
Can you explain this limited access elevator?
The limited use, limited application is actually what it is, not actually, it's limited use, limited application. They call it a LULA, L-U-L-A. You're seeing a lot of them now go into residences. It's about a $70,000 single person wheelchair, slow moving lift.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
Is it open?
No, it's enclosed. It's in its own shaft.
Okay.
The nice thing about them, they move a little bit slower. They don't require a whole lot of hydraulics. They don't require a 5-foot pit into the ground. They don't require an 8-foot penthouse off the top. It's a much more economical unit for the limited amount of use that.
You don't like
That was only.
Andrew, that's you.
Maybe more for John, but if, just thinking about the match, and I see that you're gonna try and get in-kind donations. Would the rec funds be appropriate for this? I mean, it's a rec center.
I don't think we have to make that decision now, but
Yes.
it's something we could
It's a
potentially. look at.
potential, I'm just, just so we have that in the back of the mind, but.
Yeah, I mean, I will say this, I mean, on a project of this size and for what it is, the period of probable usefulness for which we'd have to pay this back, or borrow for it if there wasn't a match, would be pretty long, where the budgetary impact wouldn't be terrible. You're looking at potentially, years. So, in some cases, using the rec trust fund for projects that maybe have a shorter lifespan could be more beneficial for our budget, but certainly can look.
Yes, thanks, Jack. I just want to say this has been a long time coming. Everybody, no big secret how old I am here, but I was around for the opening of that thing, and it was not really built with easy access in mind. There is nothing easy in that place to get from point A to point B. I'm still down there frequently. I play there, my kids play there, my grandkids are playing there. And I see the people trying to get to the second floor. It's a nightmare. Just getting to the bathrooms. It's just poorly designed for that. I think this is long overdue, for an upgrade on just accessibility, especially for ADA. I mean, that's a nightmare down there for anybody that is in a wheelchair. I can't even imagine. So anyway, good project. It's, as I said, long overdue.
Any other questions? Hearing no other questions, then I'll call for a motion to approve.
I'll move it.
Sarah Pathby, can I have a second? You have it. Any discussion? Hearing no discussion, I'll call, sorry, I got a thing. This is a request for authorization to apply for an executed agreement and any and all related documents related to a grant from the New York State Office of Park Recreation, Historic Preservation, and Dormitory Authority of the State of New York for building recreational. Word missing?
That's New York, State of New York.
Oh, I see.
Building. Recreational.
That's the whole, wow.
Yeah, it's a long one.
What, did somebody in an administration come up with that name?
Well, the end is brick.
Yeah, they
Oh,
shortened it to New York Brick. It's actually bricks. I left the S off by accident.
yeah, okay. All right. New York, State of New York for a building recreational infrastructure for communities, kids and seniors New York Bricks program in an amount of up to $3 million from the Rondout Neighborhood Center Improvements Project. Match requirement 20% and an amount of up to $750,000 will be provided by in-kind donations, force account, and or if necessary, bonding will be required. Hence the estimated financial impact to be determined. And so, hearing no discussion, I'll call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Yeah, this sounds like a really good thing for us to do.
Mhm.
Yeah, because I know too, it's really crowded and kind of wacky getting in there at the, especially like at the end of the Shamrock Run and. Yeah,
It's a well-used building, that is for sure.
yes. And it's right up the hill from, Rundown Apartments there,
Mhm.
so. Yeah,
Worthy projects.
thank you, appreciate it. Thanks, Jack.
Get in soon.
Yes, indeed. Good luck with all your projects.
May all your projects come in under budget. All right, and then next item is safe and accessible Flatbush and Foxhall. Hi, John Schulteis.
Evening, how's everyone?
We're excited that you're here.
Good.
What do we got going on with this project?
Right, so you're probably familiar with the long-planned safe and accessible Flatbush project as a whole. This is an ambitious and large project covering basically all of Foxhall Avenue and the portion of Flatbush from Foxhall to Colonial Gardens. The project has already several different grant funds involved, notably DOT, which is federal aid funds for the streetscape. Also has a DEC grant. Several months ago, we applied to the New York State EFC, that's Environmental Facilities Corporation, for an additional grant, and we were successful. Thanks to a lot of help from the grants department for that. So they're prepared to award the project an additional $4.375 million, which is wonderful. It helps close the funding gap on this large project. There's a matching requirement of 10%, basically 10% of the total project cost. So that's where the $486,111 is derived from. That's the 10% match to the 4.375. You add those two together and you get a 90-10 split. So I'm here tonight to request bonding in that amount, $486,111, which will bring vitally needed funds to the overall streetscape project. Specifically, this funding helps us pay for drainage and green infrastructure, but we've used this type of funding elsewhere, including Broadway and the Midtown parking lots, which we're also generous 90% grant, 10% match funded projects to incorporate green infrastructure. So in addition to the financial benefit here, there's an environmental benefit in that runoff will be reduced through the use of things like tree pits, bioswales, rain gardens to help us infiltrate more of the stormwater rather than send it to our already overburdened storm sewers. So that's the request for tonight. Happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions about the project itself? We're going to talk about the money in just a second. So, yeah.
What's the timeline on this project?
We're trying to get into construction in 2027. There's 2027. We're hoping to start construction, and it's given the size, it's probably a 2-season construction project.
And is this the project that Senator Schumer is giving us a grant for too, or is
Well,
that?
he came to Kingston last year to announce he was going to try to get those funds for us. Ultimately, that was not successful.
Oh, okay.
Other questions? All right, so I'm going to read the report. We need to talk a little bit about the estimated financial impact.
Right.
So the bonding, this is a bonding request to match $4,861,111 NYSDOC Green Resiliency Grant Award for safe and accessible Flatbush and Foxhall Avenues. The estimated financial impact is $4,861,111, despite the fact that we're just talking about covering 10% of that, and John will explain why it reads that way.
Yeah, so can I possibly just leave that great photo? So the bonding request, the way the bond ordinance, that the council will be asked to vote on will be a bond ordinance that reads, it gives us the ability for the city to borrow for the full amount of the project. However, the amount that would go to long-term bond would be reduced by the amount of grants that are available. The reason why we write the bond ordinance is for two things. First, it authorizes the city in the first instance to spend the money, awaiting the grant reimbursement. Secondly, if there's delays in cash flow on a grant, it would allow me to issue short-term borrowing, to fund those costs until the reimbursements come in. We usually word the bond ordinances on these larger projects that way because there can be significant cash outlay while you're waiting for cash reimbursement. So we typically don't borrow for the grant share, but it gives us the ability to, on a temporary basis, if we have to.
Any questions with that?
No.
Okay. If there are no questions, then I'll ask for a motion to approve.
Motion.
Motion by Michael, second by Steve. Is there any discussion? Hearing no discussion, I'll call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Passes unanimously. Hey,
Thanks, John.
thank you, John.
Thanks. Have a good
Thank you.
We have received a request from Dan Baker to table put off the other three items, and so we will not be considering those tonight, which means
Kwame, can you just make a note that this will be old business, number 5?
Yeah, I got it. Thank you.
Thank you.
and there is an item of old business, but I don't have anything about it, so
Matt, do you have an update?
I can give you an update. I was, basically, this was at the last, meeting. We needed to get an update from the building department as to whether or not there was actually a violation notice sent out by the, former employee who had started assessing these, daily fees. So there were no notices actually sent to this property, notifying them that they were in violation prior to starting the $1,000 a day daily fee assessments that totaled over $140,000. So that was confirmed with the building department. I don't see as there's any,
Is this okay to be in?
well,
Because,
that's the update with the building department.
okay, just let me know if
So
any
that
of
would
this.
serve as a basis to have this removed and grant this individual, the, relief that they are requesting to have the daily fee. So the employee who did start assessing these but didn't do it is no longer with the city as well, so.
Can I request attorney-client session, please?
Yes.
I am requesting attorney-client session.
then we're going into
We're gonna go into attorney-client session.
You're letting the attorney or-
Over 5,000.
Back live. All right, we have a committee report that reads authorizing the common council to remove $149,000. Actually, should that say the mayor? Because we're the common council.
So we're not authorizing ourselves.
Yeah, who are we authorizing?
I just,
But
I'm sorry, can I see the word?
Who should we say that we are authorizing to do the removal?
I don't think we have to say the mayor, that's,
Yeah.
Building safety?
Can
No.
you just say authorizing the removal of?
Yeah.
yeah.
Are you gonna be, will you speak to this gentleman's attorney about this? Let him know what's going on?
You will, do you want me to?
if you want me. I'm not reaching. Testify as well. I'm sure I'll have a phone call right earlier.
I mean, obviously, we have to, this has to pass council, so it's
Yeah,
not,
but I'm
But-
sure they're just gonna want an update as.
yeah.
Sorry.
Okay, committee report reads authorizing the removal of $149,000 estimated erroneously levied against the property 57 Leslie Avenue for daily property maintenance fines. So the estimated financial impact is $149,000 estimated. Do we have a motion to approve? Second, Michael Tierney, second by Javits. Any discussion? Hearing no discussion, I'll call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
Well, you rushed through that discussion part, didn't you?
Yep.
Thank you, Matt.
Yes.
Thank you. All in favor?
Okay.
Anyone opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you, Esquires. How'd you know how much more fun we could possibly have in this city?
And then this is the, club.
Yep.
This is the most fun that I've had today.
Actually, me too. I was in traffic for 5 hours. It's a lot of fun.
You want to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn. Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
All right, thanks, Kwame.
Done. Thank you.
Good night.
Yeah.